I sat on that cracked leather couch like it meant something. Like the peeling cushions and tissue box centerpieces could stitch back what had already rotted through. Claire sat across from me, legs crossed like a blade, arms folded like a verdict. Mason slouched beside her, chewing his sleeve, his hoodie pulled halfway over his face. The therapist asked something benign, something about household dynamics or unspoken roles. I don't remember the question. I remember the answer. Claire leaned forward slightly, just enough to make it clear she wanted the words to land. He doesn't make the rules, he's just a guest here. A guest. Not stepfather. Not provider. Not even bystander. Guest. Julie was sitting next to me on that couch. She didn't flinch, didn't clear her throat or shake her head. She didn't meet my eyes, just stared down at her lap, picking invisible lint from her jeans like she hadn't just let her daughter shoot a bullet through my ribs. The therapist blinked slowly, like she'd heard worse. Maybe she had, but I hadn't. I felt the floor shift, felt my hands stiffen where they rested on my thighs. The room blurred for a second, just a half beat, like the world didn't know whether to laugh or go silent. But nobody said a word. Nobody corrected her. Least of all Julie. That moment wasn't loud. It didn't explode. It hollowed. We drove home in silence. Claire put in earbuds before we even left the parking lot. Mason stared out the window, chewing the string of his hoodie like it was a snack. Julie kept her eyes on the road, the same 10-2 grip she always used when she wanted to pretend she wasn't there. That night, dinner was leftover rotisserie chicken and bagged salad. Claire barely touched hers. Mason poured too much ranch and left the bottle on the table. Julie asked if I'd remembered to fix the hallway light. I had. No one said thank you. It didn't start there. That moment in therapy wasn't the origin. It was the flare that confirmed what had been rumbling under the skin for years. 2.5 years, to be exact. That's how long I'd been supporting them. Covering rent, internet, groceries, Julie's car insurance, gas money, streaming services they left running for hours, Mason's school club dues, Claire's orthodontist copays, subscription boxes she'd forget to open, cell phones, weekend trips, lost chargers, damaged phones. The math wasn't vague. I kept track. Expense app, color-coded. $60,812.41. That was the number the day of the session. It'd be more by the end of the month. Of course it would. But when I brought it up, gently, quietly, late one night while we lay in bed with the fan spinning above us, Julie didn't react like I'd imagined. She didn't seem horrified or guilty. She didn't even look surprised. She said, "That's what grown men are supposed to do." Supposed to. Like being bled dry was a feature, not a flaw. Like sacrifice was baked into the job description. Like I had handed her a receipt and she'd shrugged because she'd already written it off as part of the furniture. I stared at the ceiling and said nothing. Not then. Not the next morning. Not when Mason asked for $20 just in case before heading out with his friends. Not when Claire refused to come to the dinner table because I made penne instead of spaghetti. Not when Julie left a stack of bills on the counter with a yellow post-it that just said, "Need these handled by Friday." I handled them, like always. Rent, $1,300. Groceries, $480. Claire's dance classes, $180. Mason's gaming fees, $75. Gas, $160. Car insurance for Julie, $158. Wi-Fi, $100. Streaming services, $62. Mason's field trip to D.C., $435. Claire's replacement phone after she dropped the last one, $680. At pay, forget, repeat. They didn't see me. They saw infrastructure. A man-shaped faucet money came out of. A shoulder to lean on when something broke, and only when it broke. Julie used to say she loved me for my dependability. I thought that meant security, stability. What it really meant was I didn't ask for anything back. Not love, not respect, not even recognition. I just gave. And in return, I was tolerated. The contempt showed itself in small ways. Claire pausing her show when I walked into the room, not out of respect, but because she didn't want to lose her place explaining it to me. Mason sighing when I asked him to pick up after himself, then pretending not to hear me the second time. Julie rolling her eyes whenever I tried to bring up budgeting. They called me controlling when I suggested setting limits. Cold when I refused to co-sign Mason's new credit card. Unreasonable when I asked Claire to start doing her own laundry. One afternoon, Claire told me flat out, "My real dad never made me do chores." She said it like it was a checkmate. I asked her if her real dad paid her club dues, her Spotify, her braces. She shrugged. "That's your choice, not mine." My choice. I stood in that hallway with a load of laundry in my arms, wondering how I had let this happen. How I had become the man doing everyone's chores and getting accused of asking for too much when I wanted a little civility in return. Julie said teenagers were difficult, said they'd come around, said it was a phase. But what kind of phase ends with your stepdaughter looking you in the eye in a therapy session and calling you a guest? I kept hoping something would change. That time would bend them toward gratitude. That consistency and patience would win out. But consistency in this house was treated like background noise, taken for granted until it stopped. And I hadn't stopped. Not yet. That was the problem. Even Eli saw it. My son. My real son. He stayed quiet during the chaos. Never got in their way. Never demanded extra. He'd help me unload groceries without being asked. He'd ask how my day was. He'd wait until everyone else had gone to bed. Then sit beside me for 10 minutes, just to sit. Never asked for a thing. And I saw it in his eyes. The question he never asked but always held. Why are you letting them treat you like this? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But I was starting to understand the shape of the silence. The way Julie's lack of defense wasn't neutrality. It was permission. The way Claire's mockery wasn't teenage mood swings. It was a culture she knew she could get away with. The way Mason's detachment wasn't apathy, it was learned. And me? I was the man paying the bills, fixing the pipes, cooking the meals, driving the carpools. All for a household that never once offered me a seat at the table I built. They had their rules, their allegiances, their story. And in that story, I was a guest. Fine. Guests know when it's time to leave. It started with cardboard and vinegar. Eli was building a volcano for his earth science project, 7th grade. Nothing extravagant. Just old newspaper strips soaked in glue. A plastic bottle buried in plaster. Food coloring borrowed from the baking shelf. He'd asked if he could set up on the dining table. I told him, of course. It was Sunday afternoon. The house was unusually quiet. Julie had taken Claire to the mall. Something about finding the right shoes for a winter dance. Mason was upstairs, gaming, probably shouting into a headset about headshots and lag. I sat across from Eli as he painted the cone. Careful hands. Careful eyes. He had always been delicate with his time. Never pushed too hard. Never asked for more than he thought I could give. Watching him was like watching someone try to build peace in the middle of a battlefield. He asked if I liked it. I told him I was proud. And for a moment the world felt steady. Then Claire came home. She walked in wearing a fake fur jacket that still had the sensor tag attached, holding a smoothie she'd let drip down the sides. She paused at the dining room entrance, looked at the volcano, and smirked. "What is this? Kindergarten?" she said. Eli didn't respond. He just kept painting. Quiet. Steady. Claire walked by and, whether by accident or on purpose, I'll never know, bumped the table hard with her hip. The bottle tipped. The whole cone collapsed under wet paint and plaster. Everything crumpled. She didn't stop walking, just kept heading toward the kitchen. Mason appeared from nowhere, phone already up. He filmed Eli staring down at the mess. "This is gold," he laughed. "This belongs in preschool." Eli didn't cry. He didn't even speak. Just sat there, staring at the wreckage of something he'd spent all weekend building. I walked over, took the phone from Mason's hand, calmly. He opened his mouth. I didn't let him speak. I deleted the video, set the phone on the table, and turned to Claire. "Say sorry," I said. She blinked, caught off guard. "For what?" Julie walked in then, carrying shopping bags. Claire darted past me. He's losing it, she muttered to her mom. Over a stupid volcano. Julie looked at me like I was the problem. Like my tone had been too sharp. Like I was making drama out of nothing. She didn't say a word to Claire. Not one. Later that night, after they'd all gone to their rooms, I helped Eli rebuild the volcano. Just the base. He didn't say much, but when we finished, he asked, "Can we keep this one in my room?" I said yes. He nodded, satisfied. Then he said something that split me down the middle. "I like it better when it's just us." That was the moment. Not the therapy session. Not the money. Not the dinners. That sentence. That was when something inside me stopped apologizing for wanting peace. The next morning, I logged into our joint bank account and canceled the automatic transfers, rent, car insurance, school fees. One by one. I printed out Julie's car insurance details, placed them on the kitchen counter, and left the Wi-Fi router beside them. When Claire came downstairs and found the router unplugged, she screamed like a limb had been severed. "Where's the internet?" she shouted, as if it were a birthright. I didn't answer, just drank my coffee. She plugged the router in. It blinked red. No service. Mason came down 10 minutes later, bank card in hand. He'd tried to order lunch through his app. Declined. "What the hell?" he said. "Why isn't it working?" Julie came in from the garage. I handed her the envelope with her insurance details. "What is this?" "I canceled the auto-pay," I said. "That's your account now. The card's still valid for 3 more days. After that, you'll need to set it up yourself." She blinked, confused. "Wait, what? You can't just—" "Ryan, we talked about this." "No," I said. "You talked. I listened. Now I'm talking. And I'm done." I walked past her, calm. In the living room, Claire was trying to restart the modem. Mason was already pacing, refreshing his banking app like it owed him a miracle. Julie followed me. "You can't just pull the plug on everything. They have school, activities, things they rely on." I turned, met her eyes. So did I. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. She'd already said everything she ever would the moment she sat in that therapy room and let Claire call me a guest. That night, I sat down with Eli. We talked about moving. Not far, just enough. A 2-bedroom near the university. Tight but manageable. Closer to his school. Quieter. Smaller. He didn't ask if it meant leaving Julie. He already knew. When I told him we could move next weekend, he smiled. It was small, but real. For the first time in 2.5 years, my son slept with his bedroom door open. By Tuesday, the family group chat went silent. No one asked where I was going. No one offered to help. They only messaged when things stopped working. "Claire, why is Netflix not logged in?" Mason, "Did the Wi-Fi change?" Julie, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I didn't answer. They weren't talking to me. They were talking to the services I'd provided. That Friday, I brought Eli home from school and packed the last few boxes. He carried his own things, posters, books, a lava lamp he hadn't touched in years. I took my name off the lease that evening. Julie watched me from the porch. She didn't say anything. Not "don't go." Not "let's talk." Not even "goodbye." The silence was her clearest sentence. I drove away with Eli in the passenger seat. He looked out the window, then back at me. "Do you think they'll notice?" I kept my eyes on the road. They already did. They just don't know what it means yet. We stopped for burgers. Ate in the car. Laughed. He told me about a girl in his class who brought stink bombs to school. I told him I'd used to do the same thing, and he looked at me like I'd just admitted to being human. When we got to the new apartment, it smelled like old paint and Lysol. But the lights worked. The water ran hot. The bedroom windows opened wide to let in the November air. Eli stood in the hallway and said, "It's quiet here." I said, "That's the point." That night he slept without headphones. Without fear. Without Claire slamming doors or Mason screaming into his mic or Julie asking me to pick up almond milk on the way home from work because the kids won't drink regular. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, same as always. Only this time, there was no fan spinning above me. Only silence. The kind I hadn't heard in years. The next day, Julie showed up at my office. She looked tired. Smaller, somehow. Not defeated, not yet, but dimmed. She asked if we could talk. I said we had 3 minutes. She asked me why I was doing this. I pulled up the app. Showed her the number. $60,812.41. That help has already been given, I said. She looked down at the screen. I'm not asking for everything, she said. Just a little help. The kids. They're not kids, I said. They're beneficiaries. And the benefits have expired. That night, Claire posted a video to her story. Tears, vague captions, a sad song playing in the background. No mention of me, just the loss of the things I used to fund. Mason sent a long message. Said I was being immature. Said I was acting like a child. Said I was abandoning them. But he never said I mattered. Only that my absence hurt their comfort. They missed the faucet, not the man. And that told me everything I needed to know. We moved on a Thursday. No fanfare, no announcement. Just boxes taped and labeled loaded into a borrowed truck. I told no one. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I needed to stop pretending they'd care. Eli carried his own weight. That mattered. He taped his own boxes, packed his own books. He didn't ask where we were going. He just asked how long we'd stay. As long as it takes, I told him. And he nodded like that was enough. The new apartment was nothing special. A narrow unit above a laundromat near the university district. The kind of place where the walls were thin and the ceiling fan clicked if you let it spin too long. But it had 2 bedrooms, decent light, and silence. Silence became a luxury. No door slams. No Claire's shouting. No Julie's voice asking if I remembered to Venmo Mason for his haircut. Just quiet. Eli slept with his door cracked open the first night. I didn't mention it. I just saw the way his chest rose and fell, steady. He hadn't slept like that in months. The first text came the next morning. Julie, where are you? I didn't respond. Then Claire. My dance dues didn't go through. I need $75 or I can't perform. Then Mason. Why isn't my card working? Each message was a tether. Not to me, to the comfort I'd provided. To the rhythm I'd kept going like clockwork. They weren't asking where I was. They were asking why the machine had stopped working. That weekend, Julie left a voicemail. I don't know what this is supposed to be. You can't just vanish. You have responsibilities. I didn't reply, because that word, responsibilities, was the one they'd never lived by. Only handed out. I kept my silence. Eli and I set up the apartment. He chose a shelf for his volcano. I helped him string lights across the headboard. We ate burgers again. I let him choose the show we'd watch. We sat close. Not because we had to, because it felt right. The following Tuesday, I got an email from Julie. Subject line, please read. She said the house felt off without me. That Mason had missed soccer practice. That Claire was falling behind in dance. That the internet was unreliable and the fridge was empty and the energy is just not the same. She said, you're punishing them. She didn't say, you were right. She didn't say, I'm sorry. Just that they were suffering. That I needed to come back. That they needed stability. I replied with a single sentence. They told me I was a guest. She never responded. 2 days later, she showed up at my workplace. Not angry, not even desperate. Just exhausted. She wore the same jacket she'd had since our first winter together. The collar frayed, the zipper missing a tooth. She stood at the edge of my office doorway and said, we need to talk. I stepped outside. I wasn't about to let her inside the space I'd earned with peace. She started with small talk. Said the cat missed me. Said the gutters needed cleaning. Said the thermostat wasn't working right and the boys didn't know how to fix it. I let her talk. Then she said, Claire's been crying. And I said, what about? Julie looked at the sidewalk. She says you're gone. She doesn't understand. She understood well enough in therapy, I said. Julie flinched. Just slightly. like I'd flicked a light too suddenly in a dark room. She was upset. She tried. She didn't mean it. She meant it, I said. And you let her. Julie's face crumpled. But not from sadness. From confrontation. From being called out on the silence she weaponized for years. She's just a kid, she whispered. No, I said. She's old enough to speak with intention. And you're old enough to know when someone's being torn down in front of you. Julie crossed her arms. Defensive now. So you're what? Walking away? From everything? Everything walked away from me a long time ago, I said. I just stopped chasing it. She didn't cry. Julie never cried. She hardened. You're punishing all of us. No, I said. I'm freeing myself. That night, Mason sent me a video. Him holding up his empty wallet, with a sad piano track layered over it. The caption read, "Thanks for nothing." I blocked his number. Claire posted a selfie in her dance uniform with a caption about betrayal. Julie texted, "I don't even recognize you anymore." And that was the truth. They didn't recognize me because I had finally stopped bleeding for them. They weren't mourning me. They were mourning the version of me that let them take without limits. They were mourning the ATM, not the man. The next day, Eli asked if I missed them. I thought about it. I miss what I hoped we'd be, I said. But not what we were. He nodded, thoughtful. I'm glad we left, he said. I was too. But the guilt they tried to seed didn't stop. Julie emailed again. This time with receipts attached. Claire's overdue costume rental. Mason's field trip deposit. A screenshot of her electric bill. Overdue. Can you just help a little? She wrote. Just this once. I stared at the email. Then I replied with a screenshot of my expense app $60,812. 41. Caption. That help has already been given. She didn't reply. Claire DM'd me the next evening. A video of her crying. No words. Just a slow zoom on her tear-streaked face. I didn't respond. Mason tried again too. You're literally ruining our lives because your ego got bruised. What kind of man just abandons his family? You're not just walking out on mom. You're walking out on everything. I stared at his last message for a long time. Then I wrote back. I walked out on a house that never let me in. He never replied. Eli and I got into a rhythm. Laundry on Sundays. Grocery runs every Wednesday. He started making scrambled eggs in the morning. Burned the first few. I didn't yell. I told him that's how learning works. He smiled like that meant something. We built something real. Not perfect, but real. One night, I came home to find Eli at the kitchen table, sketching something. Plans, he said. For what? He turned the paper around. A rough draft of a desk layout. Measurements. Angles. For my room, he said. I want to build it. I stared at the paper, then at him. Let's do it, I said. We went to the hardware store that weekend. Measured twice. Cut once. Screwed the legs in too tight the first time. But we figured it out. That desk still has the first pen mark he ever drew on it. They never gave me anything like that back in Julie's house. Only demands. Only guilt. Only silence. A week later, Julie tried one last time. She left a voicemail. Tears this time. Real ones. Her voice cracking. Saying the kids missed me. Saying she missed me. Saying I was being cruel. You can't just cut people off, Ryan. You can't just erase history. But history was already gone. It had been rewritten every time I paid for something they used to insult me. Every time I handed them security and they gave me silence. So I didn't call back. I didn't write. I let her words drift into the air like breath on a cold day. Gone before it meant anything. That Sunday, Eli and I grilled hot dogs on the small patio behind the apartment. He talked about school. About a science fair coming up. About how maybe he'd do another volcano. We laughed. I looked at him, really looked. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a failure. I felt like a man who had finally stopped asking for scraps from a table he built. There's a silence that comes after a storm. Not relief. Not calm. Just the absence of movement. The echo of what was loud. now suddenly gone. That's what the apartment felt like 2 weeks after we left Julie's house. Like a field scorched so thoroughly that even the wind forgets how to move across it. Eli was adapting. He always did. Quiet resilience passed down like a birthright. He unpacked slowly, gave everything a place. His backpack had a hook. His shoes lined up by the door. His science books sat in order of thickness on the desk we built. He even folded his own laundry now, not because I asked but because he saw me doing mine. We were settling into something clean. And then Julie showed up at my office again. She didn't look angry. She looked lost. Worn down like someone who'd spent too long knocking on doors that wouldn't open. She wore makeup, but it sat uneven on her skin, like she hadn't slept. "I just want to talk," she said. I didn't say no, but I didn't invite her in. We sat in my car. She looked around at the parking lot, the dashboard, anywhere but me. "Mason's grades are slipping," she said. I waited. Claire barely eats. She stays in her room. Won't talk to me. I stayed quiet. She looked at me then, eyes sharp with something between accusation and desperation. "They need you, Ryan." I breathed out slowly. "No, Julie. They need what I gave them. The difference matters." She flinched. "You don't mean that." "I do." She shook her head, blinking hard. "So that's it? After everything, you just walk away?" "You walked away first," I said. "Every time you let them treat me like furniture. Every time you watched me be erased." She opened her mouth, closed it. Her jaw tensed. "You want me to apologize?" she asked. "Is that what this is about?" "No," I said. "This is about you realizing an apology won't fix it." She stared out the windshield. "They're kids. They didn't know how to." "They knew," I said. "And if they didn't, you were supposed to teach them." The silence stretched. She finally said, "I thought love was enough." "It wasn't," I said. "Love without respect is just dependency with better PR." She left without another word. That night, Eli asked if I would ever go back. I didn't lie. "No," I said. "They got the independence they kept demanding." He nodded. Then he asked, "Do you still love them?" I looked down at my hands. The same hands that patched their drywall. The same hands that unclogged their sinks. Drove them to practice. Paid their tuition. Filled their fridge. "I don't know," I said. But the truth was I didn't need to. Love wasn't the question anymore. Worth was. A week later, Mason emailed me a letter. Not a text. Not a video. A letter. He said he missed the structure I brought. Said the house felt hollow. Said he didn't realize how much I'd held together until it all started falling apart. He didn't say he was sorry. Just that he got it now. I didn't reply, because it wasn't a confession. It was a calculation. A weighing of what was lost. Claire didn't reach out again. Not directly, but she posted photos. The same piano music. The same vague captions about abandonment. About people leaving. About how you never know what you have until it's gone. But her face never changed. The same contempt still leaked from her eyes. Julie sent one more text. "I hope one day they understand. I hope one day you forgive me." I read it 3 times. Then I deleted it. Eli and I spent more time in the small places. The spaces nobody sees. Grocery aisles. Late-night walks to the corner store. Chess games that lasted 3 moves before we laughed and gave up. He started calling me Dad again. Softly. Almost like a test at first. But he never took it back. And I never asked him to stop. One afternoon, he came home holding a small bonsai tree. "Saw it at the nursery," he said. "Thought we could take care of it together." We gave it a windowsill. Every morning he checked the soil. Every week I trimmed it. Something living. Something delicate. Something small that needed attention, not money. I thought about how I'd spent over $60,000 on people who barely looked up from their phones. Now this boy, my son, offered me a $5 tree with roots that mattered more than any meal I'd ever bought for Mason. That's the difference. Intent. Eli saw me, not just as provider, but as person, as father. Not because he had to, because he chose to. The bills stopped coming after a while. Julie must have found another source, her ex, maybe a second job. Maybe the landlord finally gave up and moved someone else in. I didn't care. My name was off the lease, off the insurance, off the accounts. The only place my name still mattered was here with Eli. He had a science fair in March. I helped him set up. Volcano 2.0. This time it stood tall, sturdy. He used wire mesh and papier-mâché, painted it with depth and texture. We even practiced the eruption vinegar, baking soda, dish soap, red dye. It looked real. When we got to the fair, other kids pointed at it, took pictures. One teacher called it professional. Eli beamed. Later, as we packed it back into the car, he said, "Thanks for believing in it." I looked at him. I never doubted it. He smiled. "Not the volcano," he said. "Me." And that broke me. Not with sadness, but with clarity. He had seen everything. The house we left, the tension, the disrespect, the unraveling. And now, in this tiny moment, with one sentence, he gave it all a name. He was the only one who'd ever seen me as more than a man who paid the bills. Julie never had. Mason never had. Claire never wanted to. But Eli did. And that's what I kept. That's what I saved. So when people ask me, when they hear the story and wrinkle their noses and say, "But wasn't that cruel? Cutting off the kids like that? Walking away from the woman you loved?" I say this, no. What's cruel is asking a man to carry the weight of a family while being treated like a stranger in his own home. What's cruel is letting children mock the only adult who ever showed up and pretending it's just a phase. What's cruel is watching someone break for you and never once reaching down to help them stand again. I gave them everything, and when I stopped, they called it revenge. But it wasn't. It was a boundary. It was the end of a performance I was no longer willing to fund. And so I ask you now, whoever you are, was I wrong? Was I cruel? Or did I simply decide that respect isn't optional, and that the price for pretending it is too high for any man to keep paying? Because I know this. Eli sleeps well. Our home is small, but it's real. And I never once had to remind him that I wasn't just a guest. Because I never was. Not with him. Not anymore.